In hip-hop, power usually buys silence, money, influence, fear. Most artists knew one rule: don't speak on Diddy.
They will refer to me as Wild King Nights. I would have to go and prep that hotel room.
Sean Diddy Combs, already on trial for sex trafficking.
I had to clean up those rooms.
New allegations of vile behavior.
It was frightening. His eyes, they were just black.
Say the wrong thing and doors close, phones stop ringing. But there was one rapper who didn't care. One man who said whatever he wanted, called him directly, mocked him publicly, and never backed down. That rapper was 50 Cent.
I said,
Let me read it, Fifth.
Oh my God.
Sorry I can no longer help you guys. Soon you will all be happy. You are all now left under leadership of Puffy Daddy. Report to the nearest rainbow. Dinner thieves, NC and Jenny.
Before 50 Cent became a billionaire mogul, before the memes, before the beefs that shook the internet, fear was already something he had left behind. Curtis Jackson didn't grow up in a world where words were just entertainment. He was raised in South Jamaica, Queens, a place where reputation meant survival and mistakes could cost your life. His mother, Sabrina Jackson, was involved in drug dealing and was murdered when 50 was just 8 years old. That loss wasn't just trauma, it was a warning. From a young age, Curtis learned that nobody was coming to save him. By his teens, the streets became his classroom. Hustling wasn't a choice, it was the environment. Every move required awareness, every conversation carried risk, and that pressure shaped something dangerous: emotional numbness. When 50 found rap, he didn't see it as fame or fun, he saw it as escape or extinction. Most rappers tried to fit in. 50 did the opposite. He leaned into controversy, knowing attention was currency. That mindset gave birth to How to Rob. It wasn't just a song, it was a declaration. He dissed over 40 industry figures, including Puff Daddy, fully aware of the consequences. Where others whispered behind closed doors, 50 put it on wax, and the backlash was immediate. Phones rang, DJs were warned, some were reportedly assaulted for playing his music. Suddenly, rap beef crossed into street reality. But here's the truth. By that point, fear no longer controlled him. Because when you've already buried friends, when you've already stared down death, industry pressure doesn't hit the same. That mindset, built from loss, violence, and survival, is what made 50 Cent different. He wasn't fearless because he was reckless. He was fearless because he had already lost everything that fear could take. When 50 Cent spoke about street life, it didn't sound like fiction, because it wasn't. In late 1990s New York, certain names weren't just history lessons. They were still active, still respected, and still feared. One of those names was the Supreme Team. Based in South Jamaica, Queens, the Supreme Team was a powerful drug dealing organization that dominated the area during the 1980s. It was run by Kenneth Supreme McGriff, alongside his nephew, Gerald Prince Miller. Their influence stretched far beyond the streets, into music, nightlife, and unspoken rules that people followed without question. So when 50 Cent referenced them in his lyrics, it wasn't nostalgia, it was a violation. In rap, you can talk tough, but in the streets, names carry weight, and saying the wrong one can trigger real consequences. And they did. According to accounts from that time, DJs began receiving threats for playing 50's music. Some were allegedly assaulted. Phone calls came in warning them to pull his records from rotation. That's when it became clear. This wasn't rap beef anymore. This was street retaliation. As tensions escalated, the consequences turned deadly. Several of 50 Cent's close friends were killed during this period. Each loss sent a message: stop talking. But 50 didn't. Then came the moment that should have ended everything. In 2000, 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house. He was hit in the face, the chest, the legs, injuries that would have killed most people, but he survived, and that survival changed him forever. The fear that once kept people silent, it disappeared, because once you've been shot 9 times and lived, threats don't sound the same. That moment didn't scare 50 Cent into silence, it carved something colder into him. From that point on, every warning felt empty, and the streets learned something important. 50 Cent wasn't backing down. There's a moment in every real street legend story where fear either wins or dies. For 50 Cent, that moment came in May 2000. Outside his grandmother's house in South Jamaica, Queens, a gunman approached his car and opened fire. 9 shots rang out. Not warning shots, not intimidation.
This was meant to be an execution. 50 Cent was hit in the face, the hand, the chest, the legs. One bullet destroyed his jaw. Another narrowly missed his heart. Blood filled the car. Most people don't survive that, but he did. And survival came with a price. Recovery was slow, painful, humiliating. He had to relearn how to speak clearly, how to eat, how to move. But while his body was healing, something else was happening. Fear was leaving. Because once you stare death in the face and wake up the next morning, threats lose their power. Whispers don't shake you anymore. Industry pressure doesn't matter. Street intimidation sounds hollow. From that moment on, 50 Cent wasn't just rapping about danger. He had already lived through the worst possible ending. And instead of retreating, he came back louder, more aggressive, more fearless. The music changed. The tone hardened. He stopped filtering his words, stopped worrying about consequences, stopped caring who felt uncomfortable, because in his mind, the worst had already happened and it hadn't finished him. That's why later, when powerful figures tried to silence him, when executives, artists, and industry giants expected obedience, 50 Cent didn't flinch. You can't scare someone who already survived death. From that day forward, fear no longer controlled his decisions, and that's what made him dangerous. After surviving 9 bullets, 50 Cent didn't walk away from conflict, he walked through it. By the early 2000s, his name was tied to beefs that most artists wouldn't even whisper about. This wasn't internet drama. These were real names with real power. One of them was Jimmy Henchman Rosemond, a man long associated with street influence and, according to reports, linked to serious criminal networks. Their conflict wasn't lyrical, it was life-threatening. According to accounts from 50 himself, there were multiple attempts on his life after the shooting. One of the most dangerous moments allegedly happened during the filming of the I Still Kill video, when armed men were reportedly nearby and ready to strike, only backing off when the situation became too risky. Another name attached to chaos was Suge Knight. The former head of Death Row Records had a reputation that didn't need explanation. Fear followed him into every room. So when Suge Knight showed up uninvited on the set of In the Club, panic spread instantly. People ran, security scrambled, but 50 Cent didn't move. He stayed in front of the camera. Later, 50 would say that moment said everything. He had already faced worse. And then there were the industry wars. Ja Rule, The Game, Rick Ross, beefs that escalated beyond music into real-world consequences. Chains were snatched, threats were made, street alliances were tested. Any one of those situations could have ended his career or his life, but somehow he kept walking away. Each conflict reinforced the same reputation: you couldn't intimidate him. That's why when Diddy eventually became a target of 50's criticism, it didn't feel reckless, it felt inevitable. Because by then, 50 had already stood across from the most dangerous names in hip-hop and lived to talk about it. Fear had already lost. By the time 50 Cent reached mainstream fame, the list of people who wanted him silenced was already long and deadly. These weren't rap rivals looking for headlines. These were real conflicts that could have ended his life. The war with Ja Rule wasn't just diss records and insults. It spilled into the streets, involving crews, associates, and real violence. Shows were disrupted. Threats followed him city to city. The tension was constant. Then there was The Game. What started as a business partnership inside G-Unit collapsed into hostility. Shots were reportedly fired at venues connected to their fallout. Security became a necessity, not a luxury. With Rick Ross, the beef crossed from music into personal territory. Insults turned into confrontations. Property was targeted. Lines were crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. But none of those situations existed in isolation. At any moment, one mistake, one wrong move, one wrong location could have ended everything. That's the reality 50 Cent lived in. Unlike many rappers who talk about danger from a safe distance, he moved through it daily. And yet, every time things escalated, he survived. That survival created something rare in hip-hop, a man who no longer reacted out of fear. He reacted out of certainty. Certainty that he had already paid the ultimate price and lived. Certainty that silence wasn't safety. Certainty that backing down wouldn't protect him. So when people later asked why 50 Cent spoke so recklessly, why he challenged powerful figures, why he joked when others whispered, the answer was simple. These were beefs that should have ended him and didn't, and that made him fearless. Before the insults, before the trolling, before the public war of words, there was a time when 50 Cent and P. Diddy were actually on neutral ground. Hard to believe now, but it's true. In the early 2000s, before Get Rich or Die Tryin' changed everything, 50 Cent wasn't yet the untouchable superstar. He was hungry, talented, and still navigating the industry. During that period, Diddy showed interest, not as a rival, but as a potential business connection. According to people close to 50, he even wrote music for Bad Boy Records. Behind the scenes, conversations were happening, meetings were taking place. At that moment, signing with Bad Boy was not impossible, but it was never realistic. The problem wasn't talent. Everyone agreed 50 had that. The problem was everything that came with him. The street conflicts, the enemies, the history. According to Tony Yayo, Diddy ultimately backed away because the risk was too high, especially in a post-Notorious B.I.G. era when Bad Boy was still carrying the weight of loss and scrutiny. Too much drama, too many problems, too much danger. And then came the moment that quietly ended everything. One day, after a serious street incident, 50 Cent showed up to Diddy's office armed, not to threaten, not to intimidate, but because he believed someone was trying to kill him, and he wasn't willing to be caught slipping again. That was the line. From that point forward, the working relationship stopped. No more writing, no more conversations, no more potential deals. What's important here is this: there was no beef yet, no insults, no accusations, no public disrespect. Just two men from completely different worlds realizing they weren't compatible. Diddy was about image, control, and structure. 50 was raw, unpredictable, and shaped by survival. They weren't cut from the same cloth. And once that realization settled in, the distance between them never closed again. That calm period didn't last, because when it finally broke, it broke loud. The shift didn't happen overnight. There was no press conference, no official fallout, no announcement that things were over. But around 2006, the temperature changed. 50 Cent was no longer the hungry underdog. He was the most dominant rapper in the world, and power changes relationships. That's when 50 stopped holding back. In interviews, in lyrics, and in conversations behind the scenes, he started saying what many people only whispered. He questioned Diddy's toughness.
Called his image manufacture, suggested that fear, not respect, was what kept people quiet. Then he went even further. 50 openly accused Diddy of profiting off the legacy of the Notorious B.I.G., implying that Biggie's name had become more valuable than Biggie's memory. According to 50, honoring your brother meant more than branding. It meant loyalty, protection, and silence when it mattered. Those comments crossed the line. At the same time, Diddy was on television, building an empire through shows like Making the Band. Fans watched as young artists were pushed, tested, and publicly controlled, including the infamous moment where artists were sent across New York just to fetch food. To some, it was entertainment. To others, it looked like power being flexed. Behind the scenes, stories were circulating, allegations, rumors, and reports about behavior that people were afraid to challenge. Most stayed quiet. 50 Cent didn't. When the two crossed paths in real life, tension followed. According to people who were there, confrontations nearly turned physical. Security stepped in. Voices were raised. From that point forward, there was no pretending. 50 went from criticism to mockery,
trolling Diddy relentlessly, questioning his masculinity, his authenticity, and his intentions. And Diddy? He stayed smiling on camera, played it cool, acted like nothing was wrong. But behind that smile, the relationship was finished. What started as business curiosity had turned into something else entirely. Not a rap beef, a personal one. And this time, neither side was backing down. Here's what separates 50 Cent from almost everyone else in hip-hop history. When others went quiet, he got louder. By the late 2000s, Diddy's influence was untouchable. Executives, artists, media figures, most people understood the rules. You don't challenge power, you don't ask questions, and you definitely don't joke about it publicly. But 50 Cent didn't live by industry rules. He had already survived street wars, assassination attempts, and betrayals that came with real consequences. So industry pressure, that didn't register as danger. What made 50 different was simple. He didn't need Diddy, not for money, not for connections, not for validation. By then, G-Unit was a machine. Records sold, tours sold out, business deals stacked up. So when stories started circulating, allegations, rumors, and uncomfortable questions, 50 refused to play the silence game. Instead of whispering, he joked. Instead of denying, he mocked. Instead of apologizing, he doubled down. That behavior confused people. Why poke a powerful figure? Why risk backlash? Why keep pressing buttons? Because from 50's perspective, silence was never safety. He had already learned that lesson the hard way. And while many artists privately admitted they felt the same way, nobody else was willing to say it out loud. That isolation only made 50 more confident. He wasn't trying to lead a movement. He wasn't claiming moral superiority. He was doing what he always did, speaking freely, without fear of consequences. And that's why when things eventually started unraveling years later, people looked back and realized something uncomfortable. 50 Cent had been saying it the whole time. Not because he predicted the future, but because he never respected the shield of power in the first place. And once you stop fearing power, it loses control over you. For years, 50 Cent looked like the villain. Too loud, too disrespectful, too obsessed. That's how it was framed. Every joke, every post, every comment about Diddy was treated like trolling, entertainment, nothing more. Most people assumed 50 was just 50. But then, the narrative started to shift, slowly at first. Stories that lived in whispers for years began surfacing in public. Old interviews felt different when replayed. Past moments hit harder with new context. And suddenly, people weren't laughing as much. When serious allegations against Diddy began emerging, including lawsuits and detailed accusations that he has strongly denied, one thing became impossible to ignore. 50 Cent had never changed his tone. He didn't suddenly switch sides. He didn't rewrite history. He didn't pretend he always knew. He was consistent. While others rushed to distance themselves, issue statements, or stay silent, 50 responded the only way he ever had, with dark humor, blunt commentary, and zero hesitation. Some saw it as cruel, others saw it as vindication, because now the same industry that once asked, "Why is he saying this?" was quietly asking, "How long did he know?" And here's the uncomfortable truth. 50 didn't need inside information. He just didn't ignore patterns. He watched how people moved, who stayed quiet, who benefited, who never got challenged. When footage resurfaced, discussions reopened, and federal attention became real, the jokes stopped sounding random. They sounded unpremature. And in hindsight, that's what made 50 Cent different. He wasn't reacting to headlines. He wasn't chasing clout. He had already made up his mind years earlier. That doesn't make him a hero. It doesn't make him a prophet. But it does explain why when the world finally started asking questions, 50 Cent didn't have to change a thing. Because from his point of view, nothing had changed at all. By the time the 2010s rolled in, Diddy had cemented himself as more than just a rapper or label head. He was a global brand, a mogul, a cultural icon. But with power comes scrutiny, and scrutiny doesn't care about fame or charisma. Stories began resurfacing, videos leaked, former partners spoke out, allegations that had long been ignored suddenly became front-page discussions. And through it all, one constant remained: 50 Cent wasn't hiding. While others tiptoed around the headlines, hoping not to get involved, he kept his signature approach: direct, ironic, and relentless. Some of the moments were small but telling: jabs on social media, subtle digs in interviews, playful trolling, all reminders that he wasn't afraid of repercussions. And then came the bigger moments. In 2018, when public attention focused on disputes between Eminem and Machine Gun Kelly, 50 Cent didn't hesitate to reference Diddy in context, mixing commentary with humor, as if saying, "I've been talking about this long before it was trending." By 2020, even minor leaks like unreleased verses referencing Revolt TV, Diddy's media company, stirred controversy. 50 was quick to contextualize, mocking the drama while keeping fans engaged. Behind the scenes, this wasn't just jokes, it was a statement. 50 Cent doesn't bow, he doesn't filter, and he doesn't wait for the perfect moment. He speaks when he wants. And in a world where celebrity influence often silences critics, that consistency is rare. Through the years, whether Diddy smiled for the cameras, ran reality shows, or expanded his empire, 50's approach remained the same: bold, fearless, and unrelenting. It was no longer just street survival or music beefs. It had become a lesson in power, reputation, and resilience. And that's why, even in the modern era, the dynamic between 50 Cent and Diddy continues to fascinate fans. Because it's not just about who's right or wrong, it's about who dares to speak when everyone else stays silent. The story didn't stop with social media jabs or leaked verses. By 2023, things escalated to levels few could ignore. Diddy faced a series of serious legal and personal challenges. Several women came forward with accusations of abuse and assault, including Cassie, his former longtime girlfriend, who publicly described years of alleged mistreatment. This was the kind of story that dominates headlines, forces conversations, and shifts public perception overnight. At the same time, Keefe D, a former associate, openly discussed his alleged friendship with Diddy and claimed involvement in Tupac's murder, a story that reignited decades-old debates and conspiracy theories. For most artists, this would have been a moment to stay quiet, to issue a statement and step back. Not for 50 Cent. He immediately reacted in his signature style: ironic, blunt, and unfiltered. He wrote social media posts, made pointed jokes, and reminded the world that he had been speaking up long before anyone else. And then came the music. 50 Cent and Eminem, who had occasionally referenced Diddy in the past, doubled down. Eminem's The Death of Slim Shady included tracks like Bad One, Antichrist, and Fuel, where he didn't shy away from commenting on Diddy's alleged actions. From mocking the so-called Diddy parties to referencing alleged abuse and the domino effect of Tupac and Biggie's murders, the lyrics were sharp, emotional, and dramatic. It was clear: friendship, respect, or neutrality no longer existed. For 50 and his allies, speaking truth, or at least their version of it, was more important than avoiding conflict. For Diddy, this wave of attention and criticism was serious. Reports say he even sent funeral flowers to 50 Cent, a gesture that shocked fans and confirmed just how tense the situation had become. The era of silence, fear, and industry control was over, and the takeaway was undeniable. 50 Cent had never been afraid of Diddy, and that fearlessness had only intensified with time. This wasn't just rap drama. It was the culmination of decades of street survival, industry battles, and fearless confrontation, all coming to a head in the public eye. Looking back, the story of 50 Cent versus Diddy is more than a personal feud. It's a testament to how one man's survival instinct became a defining.
It also reshaped how artists navigate conflict. Before 50, many were careful. They played the game, stayed polite, and avoided risk. After him, it became clear the rules didn't always apply. Speaking your mind, even when it's dangerous, can create influence, build legacy, and define a career. And perhaps most importantly, it taught one key lesson about power. Authority is only as strong as those who let it control them. 50 Cent refused to be controlled. He refused to let fear dictate his choices. And because of that, he remains one of the most fearless voices in hip-hop history. Even today, when new generations of artists watch the feud, the interviews, the music, and the social media wars, they see more than drama. They see a blueprint for surviving, thriving, and never backing down. And that's the ultimate legacy of 50 Cent, a man who survived death, defied giants, and showed the world that real courage isn't just surviving bullets, it's living without fear. As we wrap up this chapter of hip-hop history, one thing becomes crystal clear. 50 Cent's story is more than music, more than beef, more than fame. It's about survival. It's about courage. It's about refusing to be controlled, whether by the streets, by industry giants, or by public opinion. From South Jamaica Queens to the world stage, 50 Cent turned every struggle into a lesson. Every shot fired, every close call, every insult hurled at him, he transformed into fuel for his ambition. And in his battles with figures like Diddy, he showed something rare in hip-hop, fearlessness that wasn't performative. It was lived experience. It was hard-earned wisdom. It was a constant reminder that power only works on those who allow it to. Even as the industry evolved, even as alliances shifted, and even as controversies unfolded, 50 never changed. He didn't apologize for surviving. He didn't hide from history. He didn't silence himself for comfort or safety. And that's why his story resonates, not just as entertainment, but as inspiration. For aspiring artists, for fans, for anyone watching power dynamics unfold, you don't have to bow to authority. You don't have to hide from conflict. You don't have to let fear define you. 50 Cent's journey reminds us that sometimes the greatest legacy isn't the music you make or the records you sell, but the spirit you refuse to break. And that, above all, is what makes him unforgettable. Stay real, stay focused. It's your boy, Mr. Jilly TV, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.